Recording is on.
Welcome to the November 25th DXDAO governance discussion, starting with governance 1.0, the current roundup of things going on. Actually, I just want to give a kind of overview of what we want to talk about because there's a couple different things. So in the governance 1.0 stuff, proposal roundup, there's kind of a couple different things in there. I just want to go over and flag and see if anyone has any updates. And then I would like to talk about a little bit of the Treasury TBTC call that we had yesterday and just kind of where we're at on that. And then I think we can like bunch together this new worker update that we have. There's a couple proposals, and then there's kind of been some discussion on the worker compensation improvements again in a lot of different areas. And I think we could devote a bit of a time to that. And then just if we, the 1.x up, I don't know if there was anything on XDI, DXDAO, and then governance 2.0, the working group, midway check-in, and then maybe chatting a little about the bonding curve group. And then Ezra, maybe if we wanted to talk at the end about kind of some of the questions you had on some of that, it might be a good time there. But yeah, so starting first with kind of the proposal roundup. The first one that's kind of there that I want to talk about was the Dxd Burn Proposal. So I believe this proposal has it would burn 500 DXD from the pre-mint. Augusto had written up a forum post on it, and there was some back and forth on that. And then he submitted a proposal, I think a couple days ago, and I think it is now pending boosting. Yeah, and so there's kind of been some interesting discussion on the forum thread there. Just wanted to see if anyone had any thoughts on that they'd like to bring up now.
Well, I thought we can share the discussion here. Well, it's not going to be here in the video, but there is a doc post about it. So the main thing that happened, I created a short topic asking how much DXD should be burned, just to kickstart the discussion of if we were going to burn DXD and share my view on it. And I created a poll without I forgot to add the 0% option. So that is something that was important. And some users reflected that they wanted they will support a 0% option. Nevertheless, I think they were not as much as the one that they voted for 0.1, but they voted for the lowest possible option. We also saw a lot of votes go to, for example, the 10% option, where there is a sentiment where we see that users, they want to burn the token because, well, for the reasons explained in the topic. So we had mixed replies there and votes and feedback, and I submitted a proposal to burn 0.5%. The winner was 0.1, just by one vote over 10%. So in order to give to take in count the rest of the vote that they wanted to burn more than 0.1%, I thought that it was going to be good to raise the number to 0.5%. So now it's going to be boosted, and let's see if it's going to pass. I guess we are going to have mixed votes on it, which is going to be good because it will be good to have a split decision once in a while for good governance. Yeah.
Other thoughts? I just had a couple. So I had posted on that thread there, and so I do plan to vote against this proposal, even though, kind of as Augusto said, I really enjoyed kind of like how this is, making us think about these things, and it's like making us. I love when things like make us understand the systems that we're using more, right? Like, so I feel like I understand DXtrust a little bit more, and then obviously like having a contentious proposal like kind of helps everyone understand DAO stack. And you can check out my post on the forum for kind of questions about why my reasoning for that. And the other point I just want to make is kind of a meta governance discussion point here. And, as Augusto was trying to say, okay, we want to think about burning DXD, but then the question is like, how much do we burn? And of course, Alchemy DAO stack is built on up or down proposals. So whatever you submit as a proposal, right, that's, you can only submit one number. And so this kind of process reminded me a lot of what Maker does on a bi-weekly basis in terms of setting the stability fee. And so they have to basically have a on-chain poll the week before, or I think it's like 4 days before, to give a range of options for the stability fee. That's voted on. And then the winner of that one is then put to an executive vote that's an up and down one. And so I just think like thinking about how we can maybe have some tools on that to kind of better get to a specific number when we want to have a number that's going to be put to an up or down vote.
I guess, well, we don't have Nylon here. Yes, Nylon, there is some work on the competition scheme, right? That is something that we can use to present different options.
I don't know if he's not available or whatever, but
sorry, competition scheme, like we're about to do the first competition scheme on X now on Xdai chain to source some popular Omen markets from the community, and it will be open because anyone can enter a market, and then rep holders on Xdai can vote, and it will be like about a week, like a bunch of days to half a week to submit markets, and then there's another voting period where rep holders vote to choose the best ones, and then the winners automatically will get. The proposal is that the winners will automatically get like 0.05% rep on XDXDAO. Now, this whole competition scheme goes into a proposal, and to even start the competition scheme, rep holders have to vote on whether or not they like to pass this competition scheme, and then that's what kicks the competition scheme off. So you can, if we do that successfully, we can also do something like that for more decision, like easy multiple decisions from rep holders. But in this case, we're doing it on DXDAO, not on mainnet. You can theoretically do it on mainnet too. It would just be a lot more expensive, I think. But if we're doing a major decision, we probably want the competition scheme on mainnet too.
yeah. So actually, it would be. I mean, I don't think it's even possible to upload the competition onto the mainnet DAO just because of the ARC version. So, like, I mean, it could probably happen, but it might be risky. So yeah, that's that. So I mean, yeah, I guess signaling proposals like that should happen on Xdai then.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think luckily we're not, Maker is setting interest rates every week. Like, it's really important that they figure out like how to narrow it down. Like, we don't have that many governance decisions that are like this right now, but I think like this is just going through this process, I think has kind of pointed that out, and maybe we just need to think about how we would, narrow decisions before the up or down vote in a way that's either on chain or somehow kind of signaling different ways. So
yeah. So one thing that is just worth bringing up here is the possibility of just having a feature that's polling based on your reputation, which could be on chain, but it could also just be off chain, but based on your still based on your reputation. Like, adding a feature like that to Alchemy is a thing we could consider if that's something the DAO wants to do. It's something that I've considered, if that should be on the roadmap. So if that's something that you care about, definitely don't be shy about it.
cool. Awesome. And then just kind of moving on to, I think, just another proposal that I think actually just passed, the Omen Squad. And so that awards, I think, 33 ETH which I don't know how much it was in the original proposal, but maybe a bit more now, that will kind of be used to help provide liquidity on Omen markets. And I think it's a really important kind of step forward. And so, Sky, I guess you kind of been leading some of this effort. So like so now the proposal is passed, I guess from like a governance perspective, is there anything that we should be thinking about or helping, or kind of, I know that there's some market curation kind of thing, or market curation things going on there.
Yeah.
So any kind of updates there?
Yeah, the main idea of the entire thing is to let the community of Omen and DXDAO community and draw people in to help curate and create markets that everyone agrees would be good markets to have on Omen. And at first, rep holders will be the one, like anyone can propose things, and then rep holders will be the ones who decide like, oh, these are 3 awesome markets, let's fund those. And the idea is to use community knowledge to understand what great markets would be. And then Omen Squad like literally just takes the decision of the community and executes them and puts them on Omen. And yeah, so the idea is that we have to start sourcing and leveraging the greater Omen community in order to make Omen successful. And so using some capital to help accomplish that. But it's really the sourcing of the markets, which we'll use a competition scheme for to try that.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, like that will all happen mainly in the Keybase Omen, the Omen channel on Keybase, and then we'll also involve obviously like Omen Telegram, and like if anyone wants to, or that's listening here wants to get involved in that, just follow the Omen channels on related to DXDAO.
Cool. And I think there's, as we develop different processes or ways of engaging with the community, obviously there's a kind of like a lot of overlap. So maybe there's some things we can learn about using the competition scheme, or just kind of getting feedback from the community elsewhere. So that's good. Then just moving along, there were kind of 3 proposals that are ongoing right now. So there's a DXDAO market curation batch number 6 on Omen. I think that's for some of the Gnosis DAO related markets. There's also a proposal to add API 3 token to Mesa. API 3 has been kind of in and out. There's been several members of the API 3 DAO community that's kind of been overlapped a little bit with the DXDAO community. There's a Keybase channel with API 3, and I think they're planning their IDO next Monday. And then there's an additional proposal to add Uni and P&K as Omen collateral. So the kind of different options for Omen collateral there. Cool. And then switching to Treasury TBTC update. So yesterday there was a call with Stephanie, I believe. I can't remember exactly her name. Someone from
Carolyn
from Thesis, kind of walking several community members through TBTC and kind of what how it functions. And just for background, this is part of an ongoing discussion about how to maybe diversify the treasury a bit. And so luckily Ethereum's been performing well, but there's definitely some need to diversify that we've talked about into stable coins, perhaps for runway, but then there's also maybe some opportunity to diversify into other assets, one of which being Bitcoin. And so TBTC is kind of positions itself as decentralization maximalist also. That's kind of what their approach to synthetic Bitcoin is, and trying to create what they call a trust minimized Bitcoin synthetic. So I think it's a good project. It is clearly behind RenBTC and WBTC in terms of market penetration. I think there's about 25 million TBTC now that's been minted. About 85% of that is sitting in a curve pool now to kind of help with the peg, so it can be easily traded for REN BTC or WBTC. So I think the conversation was good. The kind of takeaways from my side, and anyone else can kind of join in, are one, TBTC current liquidity, current penetration is still in development, and it doesn't really rival those other ones. And then two, it seems to fit the ethos of DXDAO amongst the Bitcoin synthetics, right? So obviously WBTC is custodied Bitcoin, so that would be kind of a central point of failure. And then the REN BTC now, I'm not exactly familiar with the technical details, but I think it's like basically still run by like a multi-sig, or at least the bridge there. So I think there's some alignment there. And then third, perhaps most interestingly, I think the conversation after the call saw that maybe this is an opportunity for Swapper to have a TBTC ETH pool. So obviously if DXDAO wants to diversify into TBTC, that TBTC could just sit in the treasury where it would benefit hopefully from price appreciation, but it also could be put to work in a Swapper pool. And given that TBTC does not yet have the same kind of market penetration of WBTC or REN BTC, there's a hope that this would be a way for kind of Swapper to own like a big pool. So that's kind of where we're at now. We'll kind of go back and forth with them a bit more. I don't know if others on the call or kind of Treasury had thoughts to add.
I think there was some talk there too about potentially having, like Ezra's mentioning, some deal there, but I think they do have some keep tokens set aside for liquidity incentives. So I think there is some potential that we could figure something out with them in regards to Swapper. No, I mean, no guarantees, obviously, but I think that was a possibility.
Yeah, I think that would be the hope. We kind of have to figure out how that deal works, but.
Is synthetic the right term? Like, I guess I'm not really sure what the definition of synthetic is, but it is backed by Bitcoin. Like, it's locked on the.
I think synthetic is anything that is like not on the Bitcoin blockchain. Would be what I would say.
On Ethereum or on Bitcoin?
I think Bitcoin on Bitcoin blockchain is anything that's not Bitcoin on Bitcoin blockchain is probably synthetic. But because like WBTC, I would consider synthetic, even though it's backed
sure
by one.
But it's
one-to-one.
collateralized by ETH. You have to back it with ETH.
And BTC. So they actually have.
Yeah, I don't know. If
And keep.
I more think it's completely synthetic, like like the project syntax.
But there is like one Bitcoin, like real Bitcoin, locked up on the Bitcoin blockchain.
ETH has a backup.
And ETH.
Yeah, so
yeah, it's not very capital efficient, right? And that's like kind of their biggest struggle now. But I think, I mean, to me, it seems like DXDAO would be a great opportunity for them. Someone that has
they have
a lot of ETH.
And they have a lot of keep too.
Yeah,
it's kind of a terminology thing, but I usually I'm pretty sure when people talk about synthetic derivatives, like synthetic is like the actual underlying is not there. And so like I would say even WBTC, TBTC, like when they're backed by actual real BTC somewhere, it's just a matter of who controls it. I would call that a derivative. It's a Bitcoin derivative, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's synthetic because synthetic usually means it's like created out of thin air, like the exposure. But
I think all derivatives are synthetics, but
I say synthetics are derivatives. But
sorry, Chris, you were elder. I think the other cool thing about this is that if the goal is to diversify and hold both assets, then impermanent loss is not really an issue, or less of an issue. I guess you want some balance, but if you want 50-50 and that the pool is actually doing that for you and maybe even helping you keep your diversification the way you want it.
Yeah, I actually remember listening to a podcast specifically someone talking about derivatives and synthetics and like how those words like don't mean anything. So I don't, yeah, I don't think we'll find the conclusion to that. But I just think that is kind of an update. We don't have, there's not like a clear plan right now, but I think just from the community side, we kind of see maybe some potential there that we need to develop, particularly as they kind of, I think they need to build out a, so their system relies in the same way that like MakerDAO relies on like a healthy ETH to DAI market, right? So if ETH crashes and you need to liquidate, like you're selling ETH for DAI and there's a whole keeper system to do that. For this, it's ETH to TBTC. So they would need to like have, you know, a pretty healthy liquid market of that. And they don't like have any of that right now. And the recent moves that they're doing, so they have things in Curve right now. Those are, I think, mostly about peg management, making sure that this TBTC trades at the right price of Bitcoin. And they haven't done as much on the ETH TBTC market, which I think is going to be pretty crowded because SushiSwap and Uniswap have a super, super big ETH WPTC pool. So maybe that's an area where we can kind of work together. Yeah, because just to close up, because like I think some people would even argue like a fund, like an ETF, is a synthetic, but like that's a whole other.
Yeah, I think the reason, I mean, in my mind at least, like, the reason it's called synthetic as in like fake is it doesn't have the underlying. It's not backed by the underlying asset. So like USDC is not a synthetic, but DAI is, right? Because it's not, DAI is not backed by dollars. It just emulates the price of a dollar.
So what would you call USDC?
It's just a representation.
Just a regular derivative. Or
right.
whatever.
Yeah. I mean, the whole point of this, is to talk about the Bitcoin on Ethereum market, because like that's a really important market from like an investor perspective. So whatever like RenBTC, WBTC, and TBTC are, like that's a market and they are competitors.
I think DAI is actually a good example of why this is actually confusing and not always cut and dry, right?
Yeah, what's DAI backed by?
It's like it sort of has backing, but it's also kind of different. Yeah, it's just, you know, it's
backed by ETH. Yeah.
Not
well,
only,
USDC,
you know, DAI, TBC.
Yeah, but the point is, it's not backed by US dollars, right? Like, I mean, I guess, it's
well,
becoming less
USDC.
of a synthetic. It's becoming less of a synthetic.
Well, it's not synthetic in the sense that it has real backing, but it's synthetic dollars in the sense that it's not backed 1-to-1 by dollars or whatever. So say, I don't know. It's just, yeah, I think Chris is right. This is not something that's going to.
We call it BTC. We call it BTC on Ethereum. That's what we should call it. BTC on Ethereum.
That's just long.
I think we need a working group to define synthetic.
Well, because I also think custody is a really important thing. You're saying backed by the underlying asset when like there's no such thing as like a reliable custody in like blockchain world. So I think that's all kind of every like smart contract is like a derivative in a way. Anyway. Okay, and then I think that was it on, yeah, so the last thing on the governance 1.0 front is just wanted to kind of pick up a little bit of a conversation that's been going on over the last couple weeks and is kind of, I think, heightened over the last this week, just broadly about worker proposals, worker onboarding, and how we can kind of get better at that. I had like some notes that I started putting together, but not as many as I'd like, but let me just share my window. Okay, so I think in general, we're looking for more clarity on the worker proposal process. So DXDAO contributors should focus their time on building DXDAO products and community engagement, not jumping through bureaucratic hoops or inducing unnecessary stress from uncertainty or lack of clarity. Feedback and performance review are also kind of important for this. So I think there's kind of almost like two different things we're talking about here, right? So one is the proposal process for ongoing workers. So this is a lot of people, myself as kind of included, like, do we have standards on when to submit, how long the proposal process, like, et cetera, et cetera. Accountability, like how do we establish kind of standards on this in terms of seeking feedback on the scope of work, reflecting on your previous work, and then maybe against creating KPIs and how we actually kind of do that. And then second is kind of new worker onboarding. And I think one of the things we're maybe overlooking this is like, how do we make decisions about whether someone is a fit, whether their skills match up, whether they're whether we're willing to kind of engage with them even on a like trial basis. Like, who makes that decision? Obviously, at the end of the day, rep holders make that decision in terms of like approving or disapproving a worker proposal, but there's a lot that needs to kind of get done until we get there. And so I think it's kind of incumbent upon people in the community to maybe see how we can, provide feedback to new workers, but maybe clear guidance on whether things are a fit or not. And then I think it's also very important is like, how do we make it easier for new workers just in kind of general in onboarding and making things kind of clear. So there's kind of two different, I think, instances that have kind of been, or in the last kind of week or two. So one, there's a couple newish workers that are in the process of trying to get integrated. So Martin is kind of one of them, and then Keenan is another. And so there's kind of a whole process of like, okay, well, how do we deal with them? They're kind of two people that are looking to get integrated and onboarded. So is there an opportunity to maybe set some new precedents there? And then second, there's been some discussion on a couple different workers that are, I think, in various processes of, or various stages of the worker proposal process. So some people have written out a scope, and some people have already completed a trial period. So this is, I believe, Bram, Ji Kun, and Eugene. And so there's kind of been some confusion over like how we evaluate their trial periods, how we evaluate their initial work of scope. Maybe they think they're a worker level 5, but we think they're a worker level 3. So I just kind of wanted to kick off the conversation there and see where people are going. And just as a addendum, I don't think we have to have only hard and fast rules or only kind of cultural precedents. I think there will be kind of some combination of both of those, but I think it's probably important that we do provide clear guidance. That's kind of the goal here. So thoughts, questions, comments?
Yeah, I maybe start because I was like probably one of the guys who asked like for a bit more like details and like accountability in these forum posts while we were kind of like sifting through the forum. And this is kind of like, mainly for us, like when we were like new to DXDAO, these worker proposals, they seemed very, rudimentary, I would almost say. And then like also like in exchange for like the money that was kind of like being paid, right? I'm not saying that there's like too much or too little being paid. I don't want to go into that conversation. It just feels like, the community is making decisions based off like very few variables. I can definitely see how that is not going to improve by kind of like in introducing like more bureaucracy. But what I would maybe suggest is to have teams. So like to have like teams which like with certain responsibilities, and to kind of like define like a team lead. And then this team lead is going to be judged by the community, and the team lead himself, they can like then see, okay, like I need like 3 more people for this, right? But if they don't perform, then the team lead is responsible for this. And that way it's maybe easier, to kind of like for the community to really keep these workers in check. And also like a team can have like a more defined scope over like a longer period of time, right? I mean, you could basically say, okay, like I want to like create V2 for Swapper, or kind of like provide straddle options to remove impermanent loss. And you kind of like say, okay, I need 50,000 for this. And I'm going to hire like 2 or 3 people to do this with me over like, I don't know, like a 2-month period or something. And that way it's kind of like much easier to have accountability, in my opinion. I know this doesn't work like for a lot of things, like, you know, especially like what Chris and John are doing, but I think this would work for a lot of like the very product related stuff.
And just to add two specific examples of that. So we do have like the worker proposals, I guess that'd be people kind of on here, but I guess there have probably been two examples of more contract-based work. And so one is the auditor we're dealing with, Phil. And so he's kind of had a bunch of proposals that are paying him for work that he's doing on auditing different ones, but those are, it's actually with his company, Sunfish Technology. And I think the way that those are structured are much more contractor based as opposed to ongoing worker based. And then the other one is with Block Rocket, which is a development shop that has been working on some vesting contracts. And then there was some previous discussion, I think, on a kind of mix and working with more like contract-based work. And so I think contract-based work is very good and like that's definitely, I think, more, yeah, it's definitely easy to be accountable. The question is like, how do we create the contract work? How do we create some like scope of work that is like on a platter that we can all kind of agree on? And that's kind of like a difficult process. But and those are from the contract work. There's we have done some regards in that.
Can I mention something as well?
Sure.
So one thing that may help, just because it seems like with the worker proposals, in order to get the bigger rep holder community involved, because there's so many worker proposals every month, and it's really hard for a rep holder who's not also someone who's being paid by the DAO, working for the DAO, to actually know, the specific details of what each worker does. So they're not going to feel informed enough to want to vote. It could help to get more, get more engagement from rep holders and eventually DXD holders when they do get rep, to try to do some sort of semi-annual quarterly budget. And then we can relate the worker proposals to that budget. So there's some sort of tracing, with where the money is coming from, and then, kind of checking in to see how projects are moving along. And then if something new comes up that's a new idea, then a new budget gets proposed. So it doesn't have to be, super strict as far as, how often the budgets are voted on by the community, but there's some sort of, obviously we have this huge treasury, but there is some sort of need to like keep an eye on things, just like we keep an eye on our own bank accounts every month. That's all.
Yeah, in general, I love the idea of having things that are quarterly or half year that like rep holders are engaging with. And those are like larger issues. Maybe they're kind of, and so they're not getting like caught up in the minutia of every individual proposal, but like, how can we have some larger budget or strategy things that are engaged the broader community?
Yeah,
Exactly.
I remember when I was getting involved a few months ago, like there was kind of talk of that, but it felt like the last maybe 3-4 months has been like a ramp up period. So there are all these like moving parts. And so now that things have ramped up and there's more of a known workforce and known needs around products and stuff, I think another take at that actual like annual budget for pay, annual budget for rep distribution, annual budget for or semi-annual, whatever, is probably, we could do that a lot better right now. Because like during this ramp up period, it was, it grew from 3 people to 20 people. And now you kind of have to, it's like startup world, right? Like when startups start, they need money and they start growing, but like in the beginning, they don't even have budgets. But now we probably are in a position to do it, which would be great.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And you also create like departments, right? When you have suddenly like 20 people, it's not like that, like the CEO is just managing each one of them individually, right? But he has like 2 or 3 people that he manages that are managing the other people. And that's kind of like what I'm trying to suggest, with trying to form teams around certain things, because that would make accountability and also like managing what is going on much easier. Plus, it would give the individuals who are running the teams much more freedom in terms of, like the length of their engagement and, what they can actually do with the money and who they hire, etc.
Yeah, just on the, let me switch, I don't know how I switch screens here. Because we kind of, as Sky was saying, we actually did, I feel like, have these we started these kind of conversations, I'd say like, in September and October, and we did some work on there, but it was kind of like during that time, things were kind of changing so much that, but now I think we can kind of have time to maybe reflect on that. And this was actually, the budget was something in the 5-point plan that was passed 2 months ago. And so I just want to quickly share like where we had done some, let me find I'd done some work on this of kind of splitting up, it was here, splitting up some of these into groups and products. And this was actually with some expectation when we were looking to hire people. This is actually not the right one. But anyway, I think there's kind of a good point about just broadly how we're kind of tracking it and figuring out how to have, I think the goal probably that is for like a quarterly budget or something that's like more of an approval thing. Second, I just wanted to kind of take it a little bit back to the current like worker onboarding process. So I think that's like a more structural thing, and think about how we can have accountability at that level. But just in terms of like submitting worker proposals now and kind of establishing clear, I guess, precedents on that, and then also evaluating some of like the recent worker inflows from some of the developer communities. I don't know if anyone had any kind of reflections on how we can do a better job of, say, evaluating or like whittling down workers before the trial period as we're kind of getting to know them. This is, I guess, brings up the whole kind of onboarding discussion in general. Cool. All right. Well, just the last thing, I guess, on this before moving on is, so there has been, I think I mentioned earlier that there's just kind of been some discussion and some maybe pushback from a couple individuals that are now submitting worker proposals and scopes of work, and some kind of community members are trying to figure out what the deal is. And I think there will hopefully be some kind of clarity that we can ask questions in the forum going forward.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it would be great because like a lot of these worker proposals seem just like totally random, with like no,
well, like, maybe to you.
Yeah, exactly, right? Maybe probably just to me, right? But therefore, it would be great, if these worker proposals could maybe include some references to previous posts, where they kind of like refer some, okay, here was like a specific call for that specific action item, or here's kind of like what I did this was like my previous engagement, etc. But right now it's just usually like copy paste of like the initial stuff they did like maybe 2 months ago, or like copy paste from someone else's worker proposal when they are completely new, and then just fill in their own specifications, and that just makes it really hard for anyone else to evaluate, okay, is this kind of like, does this make sense or not?
Yeah, just wanted to say what just happened like I think a few hours ago, that it seemed it looked the same to me when I saw the proposal from the user Keenan, that I didn't remember seeing him on the calls before, and I had to flag one proposal that was for sure spam, and it didn't even have the DXgov tag, and I flagged it and I removed it. And then I saw the Keenan proposal after some incident that happened with other workers that we had to review because we weren't sure, and they didn't. There was some trust issues with other workers that they were working for us. verifying who they were and what they were working on. So when I saw, for example, the Keenan proposal, I was like, wow, this look exactly the same. It has no external, and it had no external link to nothing I can validate just by seeing it the first time. And again, it didn't have any mention to other user on the forum that he could refer himself. So if it has a tag, for example, to Chris or Sky or John or Geronimo or anyone, I will wait for them to see. I would have waited for them to see, okay, the guys are going to reply and they're going to see the reference. So, but there was nothing. So I flagged it and I shared the group. Hey guys, I shared this proposal, and they told me, no, Augusto, we know him. We know him. We were with them on the calls. So there we found two issues. One is that we need to work on how are we going to curate and keep our forum clean, because we are going to start seeing some spam there. And we need to have a process for that. I guess that later, all the users who have the rights to flag a proposal, maybe we are going to have a chat room and ask before flagging something, hey guys, what do you think of this? Should we flag it? And we should have a process for that. And then, yes, identify these issues, like a worker proposal should have external links to other things, to previous work, to verifications, to code, or anything that the working can prove that he has been working on, and reference to other team members that can vouch for him. I think that's also super important. And we are just identifying these issues. Like, again, this was the first time that we flag a proposal and we say, okay, yeah, no, how do we flag it? So we are running into this issue at the first time. There is no guidebook here, but I think that's important that we are identifying and knowing that that we need to have at least a minimal process for this.
I think.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry. For let's like just take Keenan as an example. Like he read a lot of the guidelines out there, and he's a really good communicator. Like I think the proposal was good. Like from a totally new like perspective, like someone that hasn't been involved with DXDAO and any DAOs at all. I would say like he couldn't do more right. He was on calls. He talked to us. He talked to us separately in the chats. He even like gave the proposal to some of the DXDAO members to just discuss privately first, and then he went on and posted. So like from his perspective, he was super careful. Like if let's imagine like either like someone just not talking with us or just doesn't know any one of us, just goes on the forum and just want to propose something like, can I do this? Like that person will probably do 10 more stuff that isn't right for us or whatever it could be. So there is an information gap, and I've said like we know it. It's like you need to be on calls, you need to be in direct contact with us, and like that's I think that's a huge mistake from our part. And I think Keenan is actually one of the guys that will try to solve this. So just unify the information from what we have on calls, from updates we have on guidelines, and like just have it maybe on one place, or to like have one trusted place where you can know, like if I go here, will I have the most updated version of whatever, and just to have that place. Even me, I don't know where to go to find the latest documents or latest updates on stuff. So I just think there's a lot of stuff going on there. I'm like the forum thing is one thing. The other thing is just like anyone interested to just talk to us. Like where do you start?
Yeah, I think links are really important. It just is like, I think we're thinking about like a proposal, what's the way to kind of make these things better? It really is just like linking either to your own experience or kind of elsewhere, or even as like Gus just said, like you're adding other community members. So you're just kind of doing things that like, you know, maybe explain or kind of, or demonstrate some of the legitimacy. So yeah, I think these are all kind of good points. And I just do think the only thing I would say is I do think there are several examples of like pretty good worker proposals in terms of like laying out lots of different guidelines. I know Skies, like I'm just looking at Skies and Level Ks are kind of there. And I know Gusto has kind of linked to those in the past. So I think the problem is like, how do we make sure that like the good ones are recreated and kind of, maybe it's like setting samples, right? And having something there. But I think the spam attack is probably going to get larger too.
Yeah, two things. Just to finish, we will need a process to keep the forum clean. Now we learned that we need to ask other island. I have to ask other users before flagging something if I have any doubt. And then yes, external links. Like any proposal, you cannot say, "Hey, I did this," and
I think we shouldn't say you can't. Like, not all worker proposal will be the same. Like, if you worked as a designer, maybe you should like show.
But wait, I mean, you can say I did this. If you say I did this and I share this link to work that I did, that it can be verified, or I did this with someone else, right? Yeah. Exactly. You need to prove you need to prove your work. For example, I did it with Seth. I talked with Chris. I shared the proposal with Sky. If I see something like that, I see, okay, yeah, this guy did right. But when I was reading it, I saw no one tag and nothing. Just a bunch of things like I did this and I talk here, but there is no proof of proof of work. That is super important.
Yeah, I think for sure that like I think either you link to something, some work, or someone like a DXDAO member can vouch for you, and that person should be like, we should trust all our members, like the workers at least. So those prove themselves, and maybe if someone can vouch and wants to be anonymous, and then that voucher should take the blame if something's wrong. Like obviously, that would be much better.
Yeah. It like you said, it's proof. It's like almost proof of work, but like you can prove your work, and it's impossible. You know, there'll be many different ways to do that.
Someone also answered to one of my comments that it would actually be nice to have like an external, like someone else who's kind of like another worker to make like a proposal to evaluate, other workers, because that way, you would have like, I like this because it would create like the least bureaucratic burden to the individual workers. They would just have to like be subject to like a review to some extent.
Does give that person an awful lot of power, or just like I think it's kind of like, well, who is making that like scope decision? I think that's like the hard thing, right? And so it's like we're kind of pushing that around. But I think actually Violet had some kind of thoughts on this, and it's just in general like, how do we create KPIs is really kind of what it is.
Yeah. I was sending messages to Chris because I think like month over month, like we need some metrics to evaluate like how successful our projects are, because like, okay, we have some people leading projects, like, but how do we determine if they're leading them good? Like we, if this continues, like if someone becomes a team leader, like he will stay a team leader no matter what result he's producing, So I think that should be accounted for somehow. Like maybe just one metric even would be good. Like, okay, so how many successful if we have a better volume on the platform, like, or I don't know, like whatever.
What happens if one of the KPIs fail?
Well, I you know what I think? I think like they should be positively incentivized. Maybe if they have good result, and like maybe they should be like negatively incentivized if they don't deliver.
Yeah. Well, just a little preview of my critique of futarchy is whoever defines the KPIs is the ultimate power broker, and like that has to become in some like decentralized way, and like how do you hold them like accountable? And I think that is like such a difficult problem to solve, and it's not just, oh, we can define one metric. It's like, well, what is that metric, and how do you define it, and who defines it?
I mean, if like these stuff works if it's like performance based, where your effort is a measure of that KPI. Like if you work at sales and you have an average, and then you can like measure it. But if this, like for us, that creates totally new products that will come up with bugs or stuff that maybe blocks us, or community says no to something, or whatever it could be. I don't think that team leaders should be punished for like stuff.
Yeah, this already kind of happens with a 1 month or 2 month proposal at a time, because when you work for a company, you have KPIs, because if you don't perform, they measure your KPIs, and then they're like, after 6 months, they give you a warning, and then they're like, okay, you're let go or you're fired. That's why you need those KPIs.
Yeah.
If you have every 1 month, you have to do a proposal with what you propose, what you accomplished to that, and then you have to do a new proposal for the next month. If you really didn't do what you said you were going to do the last month, you're probably going to get questioned in the current process for the next month.
That it's actually a really important like power dynamic that does not exist in other it's kind of saying in other organizations, but that is like something that it's a 2 month review process like every time technically.
There's no firing people. It's so much easier. Like if someone just
you just like stop.
I was like suggesting KPIs because right now, like we don't know like if we're going in the right direction in terms of product. Like we can like do development, but we might go nowhere. Like we are maybe making bad decisions, and we're just continuing, the same path. Our projects are not successful. Eventually, we run out of money, and that's it. Like we need to have successful products, in my opinion. That should be goal number one. We have big treasury, but I don't think that's enough.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Violet. And I just wanted to add that there was a little conflation there of like KPIs for like workers versus KPIs for products. I think KPIs for products, not by you, by other, like somebody, right? We're talking about reviewing workers, but you're talking about products. And I agree very much with you. I think it's a really good thing for us to have clear goals for the products, but we don't necessarily have to have that same thing.
Yeah, well, I also think like, I don't know, I know we're decentralized, but someone needs to take like a responsibility for certain product. Like even though we're decentralized, like someone is like team owner of Omen, of Swapper, like there is,
Well, I think we kind of have. We have that now, right? I think Zet is Swapper, Mesa, Martin's kind of coming in, Omen, like Geronimo, Rails is kind of the. I think the set to my maybe final point is I think we might need a KPI working group, because this is like a huge thing. It's just like, how do we like, and it's like not accountability on like one person or like one kind of proposal, but it's like, how do we, and this is like such an important thing, like reflection in general, right? Reflection for individuals, reflection for companies is like, a incredibly important thing that we need to be able to do, but not making it a task of itself. So this is a kind of a huge thing we need to figure out.
Yeah, definitely.
Should we start sourcing? We can just start like community sourcing from workers, but also from outsiders and DXD holders. We can just start sourcing KPIs. Like we need a good platform for sourcing those things.
For individuals, are you talking for individuals or for products?
Products first, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, like for products, right? I mean, it's still very early for that, right? And like, while I like KPIs for products, to kind of like avoid, like going down the wrong route. A lot of these products are like, in a very early stage, right? And I mean, the Mesa UI, right? It's not great at the moment, right? And so like, before we have like more, usable UIs, it's kind of like KPIs could be like very misleading, and we might make some premature decisions.
What about Omen, for example?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think Omen, who knows? I guess it's like, I think with these things, there's got to be this like DXDAO path of kind of like narrowing and hardening things we're doing, right? So it's like right now we kind of need to have some structure, and like we can't make it too much structure, or it'll maybe, because products are too early, but like we need to have a path to it, like getting harder and more structured. But I think the key point is like, what direction are we going, and like finding alignment on that direction, and then like kind of starting on that path.
And this is why I'm thinking like this, this team idea, kind of like, having like one responsible person, for one project, and they can like get a bigger budget, and, they have like at least some freedom to like execute on that budget with, like obviously some predefined goals. It's probably like the easiest way, right? It's gonna create like the least bureaucracy for them. And then they can really try like a lot of things.
Also, with worker proposals, it could be helpful, if you want holders to vote on it. I know we're mostly just workers voting on other workers' proposals at this point, but saying deadline met, moving on to next deadline, or if a deadline or some goal for a project wasn't met by an expected time, to say it wasn't met, but it's because of this reason, and we resolved it this way. And then it's just there. So when something gets delayed 6 months down the line, at least there's documentation that you can go back to say, oh yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah, I think individual reflection, right? Like look at your worker proposal and say like, how did that turn out? Right. And like you kind of like doing it yourself, I think is like a good thing. And I just kind of repeating what Pulp said earlier about like figuring out things that are for all rep holders to vote on, right? Because everyone can't be following every worker proposal. They need to have kind of some insight there, but figuring out those larger things are, I think, a way of engaging it. And that's kind of maybe the budget or team's idea. Cool. We're kind of just over the hour here. I'm sure
sorry, Chris, real quick. I made this, I haven't shared it like publicly, but I shared it just with a few people, like the flow diagram of who is working on what products and initiatives. So not just individual products. I could add like a team, like add the team leaders to those as well. And we could share that publicly. And I think that will help, newcomers plus outsiders get a good idea of these teams, which kind of already exist. And there's people that go across teams. But yeah, we can make that. Zed, I know it doesn't look very good. I don't know if there's a better way to make it, but it's pretty clear if you look at it, like how people are spreading their time between the different products and initiatives. So that's cool, but we should share that publicly and get input and feedback on it, I think, and then have team leaders on those too.
Yeah, I think, Scott, I love that idea. And I just, it's funny, like you said earlier, like we actually do kind of know where things are fitting in now, but like a month ago we did, right? We kind of like, we're just kind of easing into now. So it's a good time to do that. And I also think maybe this is for Zet, like, how could we like show that really creatively? Because like, I mean, it's not like it's just be like a normal corporate hierarchy, right? Like, how do we kind of show the different workers kind of engaging in different areas? But I think it's a really important thing that we need to think about also for the main website. I think there should be another update there.
Yeah, I mean, I've already used that chart to just plan out stuff or look at I didn't know myself everything like on every worker, but I think maybe we could maybe it's not one chart, maybe it's like 3 charts. It could be like just if someone wants to know who's the team leaders or project leaders and what devs are working with what. So I'll take a look at how we can visualize that better, but it's definitely something that is helping us.
And for sure, once you're like have dove into DXDAO and you're like following it like very deeply, you can kind of even then it's still hard to figure that all out, like what that map looks like. But someone who looks like from the outside, you wouldn't be able to understand that structure unless you spent a lot of time like digging through all the different places DXDAO exists. So one place that makes it easier would be good for like a new person. Yeah.
It's in a chat.
Where's this chart?
like everything else in chat.
Yeah, no. I did see this chart. Yeah,
there
and
is.
just building on that, I think I can't actually find the document now, but the budget occurred kind of 6 weeks ago, I think could go with that in maybe kickstarting this conversation a little bit more, but and I think we should make kind of a forum post about that maybe this week or next, and kind of reset the conversation on this, which could maybe pave the way for like more specific accountability KPI stuff. Cool. All right, well, we're like over the hour. I'm assuming this recording lady is going to tell me any minute that we're at the end. The kind of two things we didn't get to, or three things. DXgov, I don't think there really was much update there, but we've kind of been talking about that, working on a couple things there, specifically to the competition scheme. And then second, the governance 2.0 working group. We have a call next Tuesday. There is an midway update check-in post in the forum if you're kind of interested in checking that out. And then lastly, I think we need to start thinking about a bonding curve working group, because I think that's kind of like the next thing that we need to tackle as we move forward here. So
one question for the governance 2.0 working group. I wanted to, unfortunately during the last call, it was like